Right. Okay, well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me for this session. How are you doing? I know everybody has to respond in the chat, but what a year and a half it has been. My name is Karen Wagnon. I'm a human behavior specialist. I am the founder of Teaching Our Youth, which is staff professional development organization that works with leaders, educators, and parents. I'm also the founder of the Parenting Blueprint, which is a one-to-one parent coaching program. And I am so looking forward to what I want to share with you today. And I had an opportunity because I have a Facebook group that because when everything shut down with COVID and I was no longer able to be with you or be with your parents, I really needed to pivot what I was doing and still being able to provide parent support. So I created a Facebook group called Parent by Design with Karen Wagnon. And as I was starting to not only engage with the parents in my group, I was also engaging in parents in other Facebook groups. I was really starting to hear some challenges and the frustrations of what was going on with remote learning. And if you could, in the chat box, could you also let me know if you were a parent who was also supporting a child at home with remote learning? Because I know not only some of you were just the educators, being thrown into the fire, trying to figure this all out, but you were also on the other side of this as well. And so as we go through this presentation, I want you to be able to share and engage with us as well, some of what your experiences were. And so and a grandmother supporting at home. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us had to just wear different hats as we were trying to make this whole system shift work in a way that was going to be effective, and it was in the beginning, it was really kind of tricky. And then things started to smooth out. But what I was able to do is put together a roundtable of parents that I had been working with over the year through the Parent by Design program, and put together a roundtable where we got on a Zoom call and just really hashed out what was really going on from the home front. What is it that worked, what didn't work, and what they needed. And I'm hoping to be sharing that with you today. But as we go through this presentation, if you have some insights, I want you to be able to share that in the chat box as well, because I wasn't able to get on a Zoom call with you, but I'm sure you have some insights to help us become more effective. So because my background is in human behavior, I wanted to bring in a nugget to better help you understand why we do what we do, and maybe why your parents acted and responded the way they did while we were doing some interactions. How many of you had, I don't think I can do a raise of hands on these chat box, I'm not sure, had a pretty decent interaction with your parents? And then how many of you feel as though it was a nightmare? It was just, I had some parents that were just like, whoa, oh my goodness, how are we going to get through this? Let's take a look at some of the foundation of human behavior to understand what works and what doesn't work. And because I've been working with parents and educators for so long, I'm sure you can relate to the fact that it's all about the relationship. It's about the relationship we have with the kids in the classroom, and it's about the relationships and trust that we can build with our parents at home if we want to be able to better support the academic success of our kids. So I want to share with you just a really quick nugget to help you better understand the foundation of human behavior. So in your handout on the first page, I want to share with you a nugget about the DISC model of human behavior. So at the top and bottom of that top section, you'll see the words outgoing and reserved. Black letters, outgoing, reserved. Go ahead and circle those words, outgoing and reserved. This is what we like to call our pace in life. As we're looking at human behavior, we have some people that are outgoing or fast-paced individuals. Everything they do is fast. They walk fast, talk fast, eat fast, work fast. They're always in a hurry. It's always on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. They tend to be more positive and optimistic, always finding that diamond in the lump of coal. They tend to be more energetic and enthusiastic, kind of cheering other people on. Now, on the other hand, when we look at pace in life, some people are just a little bit more reserved. Now, the reserved personalities just prefer a slower pace. They want to think about what they do before they do it. Think about what they say before they say it. They're a little bit more cautious and reluctant to jump into things until they're sure of the expectation or what the outcome is supposed to be. It's not right or wrong, but it is different. But for our time together here in the chat box, I want to ask you a question about your pace. What is your pace in life? Now, you may be a little bit of both depending upon the situation, but how many of you feel as though you are more outgoing? Put outgoing in the chat box for me. And those of you who feel as though you're more reserved, I like to take my time and think things through, put reserved in the chat box for me. And also on your handout, I want you to put a check mark next to that as well. So not only do I want you to respond, but I want you to put a check mark next to that as well. So I've got Wilson is outgoing, Laura's outgoing, Carol's more reserved. This is great. Keep them coming, keep them coming. So it lets me know, who I'm working with today. Outgoing people, if you haven't already identified, I'm definitely on the outgoing side of that. And I hope I don't burn out our reserved people on the hour that we are here today. But again, I asked you one question about your pace in life, and you can identify how your motor runs. But I also want you to think about the parents that you've been working with over the year. Do you have parents that have been just really outgoing and on the go and keeping things, sometimes they're burning you out? Or do you have parents that are a little bit more reserved and a little bit more reluctant? But identifying yourself, you're able to actually see it in others. So I can see we have a great mix of people who are either outgoing or reserved on our call with us today. Now, to the left and right of the handout, that top section of the handout, you'll see the words task and the words people, the word people. Go ahead and circle those words for me, task and people. So we just looked at our pace in life, in other words, how your motor runs. Now we're going to look at priority. Now, how you spend your time pretty much determines what your priority in life is. Some people are task-driven individuals. In other words, they're like fine-tuned, well-oiled machines. I mean, they go through life accomplishing tasks, getting results. They are the list-making people. They like make lists and they check things off the list. If they've done something in the day that's not on the list, they'll put it on the list so they can check it off the list. I do that. But it's all about form and function and plans and progress. They are results-driven, getting things done. Now, on the other hand, we have our folks that are more people-oriented. Now, people-oriented know that they should make lists and get things done, but they can be so easily distracted by interacting with other people. People-oriented folks are just all about the relationship. They're very open with sharing their feelings and emotions. When they're happy, you know it. When they're sad, you know it. I mean, you can kind of read their body language. And it really is all about interacting with others. They're truly at their best when they're spending time with other people. And again, not right or wrong, but it is different. So for our time together, so I have a better idea of who I'm working with today. I want you to tell me, what do you believe your priority in life is? And you may be a little bit of both, depending upon the situation. But those of you who feel as though you are more task-driven, put that in the chat box for me and put a check mark next to the word task. And those of you who feel as though that you're probably more relational, in other words, you know you got work to do and someone comes in and says, hey, do you want to go to lunch? Or they just want to chat with you and you're easily distracted and off the task. Yeah, Wilson went right to that. That's where we're at. It's not right or wrong. It's just different. What drives you? What drives you? Oh, this is great. Robin says, yeah, papers aren't the priority. No, it must be the relationship, right? It must be the relationship. And again, it's not right or wrong. It's different. But also think about the parents that you've been interacting with. You have parents that when you talk to them, they're all about, the results and getting it done right and having the structure. And then you talk with other parents and they are like all over the place. And you're going down all the rabbit trails with them when you really are just trying to explain, whatever task it is that you're trying to accomplish with your child. And I got a couple people coming in here. Lisa says it's people. Wendy says task and lets it get in the way of the relationship. Oh, that is awesome. That is genius. And Wendy, I have to tell you, I am very task driven. I'm very task driven, and sometimes that can get in the way of the relationship. So the fact that you are so aware of that is awesome. Stephanie says that it's about people. Matthew's saying it's task. And again, it's not right or wrong. It's just different. But when we put together these two, what I call observations, your pace in life and your priority life, we are able to put together what is the DISC model of human behavior. The DISC model of human behavior. So we can see that we have now created 4 quadrants, D, I, S, and C. Now, there are a number of personality models out there. Mark and my husband and I, we do a lot of work with IPA as well as working with the schools. We have chosen to use this as a foundation of what we do because we have found it to be the most want to say user-friendly. You know, it's easy to understand and it's simple to apply some of the strategies when it comes to the application. Sherry is saying, I feel I'm both. I love people, but I have a goal to meet and it's a priority. I would have to sacrifice that wonderful lunch and take a rain check. Bless your heart, bless your heart. I'd have a tough time with that one too, though, I have to admit. And Sonia's saying, I'm a little bit of both, of course, depending upon the situation. So what we've done with just those two observations is we have put together the DISC model of human behavior, as you can see here. So what I want to do right now is I want to share a couple of what I want to call characteristic traits of what you may be able to identify with the different personality traits, not only to understand yourself, but also to understand the parents that you've been needing to interact with. So the first quadrant I want to take a look at is the more outgoing and task-driven, what we call dominant style. Dominant style. Anybody feel as though when they check those two boxes, they checked outgoing and they checked task? You put that in the chat box for me. If that would be your predominant style, which would be what we call the dominant style. The dominant style likes to lead. They like to be in charge. They like to tell other people what to do. Their communication style is very direct. They do not sugarcoat it. They get to the point so they can move on to the next thing, and they're demanding. When they want it now. They want it now. The needs of that dominant personality style are choice and control. Now, if you are strong in that style, as I am, I totally get it. I like to be in charge and I like having choices. When I don't have choices and I don't have control is what can lead me to what we call the danger zone or disruptive behavior, which is defiant behavior. Defiant behavior. And so has anyone worked with a parent in which they felt as though they were dealing with a defiant behavior? I know we see it in our kids, but anybody here feel as though that they were dealing with a dominant parent that at times became very defiant because they probably had that internal need for choice and control? In other words, they're going to do what they want, not necessarily what you're asking them to do. They've got a better way and they're going to do it anyway, just as some of our strong-willed kids do. You know, it's the same type of thing. So now I want to take a look at our other outgoing personality style that focuses more on the people. So again, they're very fast-paced, but rather than the results of the task, they focus more on the relationship, is what we call the inspiring style. Now, you may have some moms that are the inspiring style. They are the fun moms. They're the outgoing moms. They talk about everything and anything. They're a little scattered, if I can say. This is my secondary style, so I don't want to be hard on anybody because I have a lot of that in me as well. But they're inspiring, interactive, and they like to be involved. So in other words, they could be calling you all the time for certain things, and you're not even quite sure why they're calling. Did you even have a question? Because we're talking about everything and anything, and I'm not quite sure what we're supposed to be accomplishing here on this call or through this email. But the needs of that inspiring style is that recognition and approval. Recognition and approval. So in other words, when you are interacting with that parent, they want recognition that they're doing a good job, the approval that they're doing a good job, you know, and letting other people know what a great job they're doing. They need to hear it. It's definitely done in a verbal way. Inspiring, interactive, involved. But those needs of recognition and approval, if they are not being met, is when you will experience illogical behavior. Can anybody comment in here and just say me in the chat if you had any parents that were just illogical? In other words, you're sitting there and you're shaking your head thinking, I'm not quite sure how I need to approach this because the behavior was a little off. Yeah. Gretchen had one, yeah, with an exclamation point, right? And Rose said, it's like they're just all over the place. Now, understand when those internal emotional needs, and for a lot of parents coming home and trying to school their kids from home and not feeling as though they had the tools, they had the support, they had the resources, and they were just absolutely had those parents. Lisa says, yeah. And so when you experience the illogical behavior, the first thing it's like you're just shaking your head, but you have to calm that energy down. You have to just give them some recognition, approval. You're doing a great job. You know, I understand this is hard, but I'm here for you. We can work this out together. You really need to inspire and encourage them. The dominant parents are the parents who get on the call with you and tell you how you can do your job better. Anybody have any of those? Okay. As if you haven't thought through and were doing the absolute best you could at the time with what you had, you're going to have a parent that's going to get on and tell you what you're not doing and what you should be doing. And how many of you had some of those too, Carol? I'm so sorry. Yeah. My parent advised the student not to read anymore this year and save the books to test for the next year. Right? Yeah. What the heck was that? Yeah, where did that one come from? Gotta love it. Gotta love it. So there's always what I say, an internal motivator to the external behavior that we see. There's always something that's going on inside of here. And when the internal needs are not being met is when we experience the external behavior. We tend to want to react to the external behavior. And so the reason why I always like to lay out the foundation of the human behavior is because we really need to understand that there's an internal need that's driving the external behavior. We want to deal with the external behavior, but we need to pause, stop a minute and say, what's really going on here? Why are they acting that way? What is the why? Is the dominant personality, if they did not have choices in what was happening in the education of their child, if they didn't have control over the environment, then you're going to experience that defiant behavior. If your inspiring parent wasn't getting recognition, approval that they were doing a great job and, and how wonderful that they were, what an amazing parent that they were, then they start doing the logical things because they want to hear it. They want to hear it. They want to hear it. They need to hear it. So let's take a look at our more reserved personality styles. Now, the reserved personality style that focuses more on people than the task is what we call the S style. But the key word about the S style is they are supportive. I mean, they like operating behind the scenes, making sure everybody has what they need. They are sweet and at times they're kind of shy. Supportive individuals. They're like the backbone. They're the backbones of your organizations at school, and they're the backbones of their families. Supportive, sweet, and shy. But their internal needs are affirmation, again, words, and security. Affirmation and security. And if when we are interacting with them, we are not providing that affirmation, words of affirmation and security, we will experience that disruptive behavior of them being a sucker. In other words, they get sucked into doing things they shouldn't. Example would be they get sucked into doing their kids' homework for them because they don't know what else. Anybody have parents who did their kids' work for them? I know we've got people coming in from different age groups, but is it possible that we had parents that were actually doing their kids' work because their kids weren't doing their work, right? They get sucked into doing the things that they probably shouldn't be doing. And so when you are working with a supportive parent, they are very shy, they are very reserved, they're very kind, they're very compassionate, but they really need more of a buildup from you, the affirmation and the security that what they're doing and they're doing the right thing, because they can be really indecisive about how they should handle certain situations. They really need step-by-step instructions. We can give them a broad scope, but if we don't break it down to them, they still don't know how they can best support their parent. Some of you have experienced parents that kind of got sucked in, and a lot of it is because their kids take over. They're very supportive, but their kids become very dominant. Lorraine said, always have Parents' Day. I couldn't do the homework. My response has been, they have the homework, you provide the support. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's exactly what we need to encourage them to do. But when there are supportive parents who see that their kids are failing because they're not doing well in this particular model, we find that they feel as though the way they support their child is to do it for them and over accommodate, which really isn't helping the child at all. But they don't want to get into the conflict with the kids, so they get sucked into doing the things they shouldn't do. But they need that affirmation and security that you can provide in your interactions with them. And let's round this out with our last of the 4 quadrants, which is, again, more reserved personality style that focuses more on the task than the people, is what we call the cautious style. Now, they are cautious, calculating, and conscientious. They are the logical thinkers. These are the logical thinkers. The needs of our cautious style are quality answers and excellence. Not just answers, it better be a good answer, because if it's not a good answer, I'm going to ask you more questions. And excellence, they are the perfectionist. They expect it from themselves, they expect it from their kids, and they expected it from you. Now, when their internal emotional needs are not being met, you will probably experience cold and withdrawn behavior. Anybody here online with me today and interacting with a parent, you could almost feel it coming through whatever, whether it was on the phone or a Zoom call, or even through an email. When they had had enough that they were shutting down, they were disengaging. Has anybody experienced that cold and withdrawn from parents because they didn't feel as though they were getting the quality answers that they were looking for, or the perfection that they wanted from you as an educator who was trying to figure this out as well, or that their kids weren't able to be perfect considering the fact that they were learning with a remote model? These are things that can be very, very frustrating for all of us when we're interacting. So as we go through building that relationship, I want you to become aware of your personality style, as well as your parents' personality style. Now, based on how you answered those two questions, the observations themselves, and how I went through this model here, in the chat box, can you let me know what you feel would be your predominant style? What would be your predominant style? So I am more on the outgoing and I'm very task driven. So my predominant style would be dominant. If you could put that in the box for me, I just want you to have a better, if you understand yourself, it's a lot easier to see it in other people. So if you could put that in the chat box for me, that would be helpful as well. Out of those 4 styles and how you answered those 2 questions, where you put the check marks, do you feel that you're more dominant? Are you more inspiring? Are you more supportive? Or are you more cautious? Pamela's saying that she's more dominant. Molly is more dominant. Great. So you like to lead, you like to be in charge, you'd like to explain and tell other people what need to be done. And I think that's a great strength of leadership that you can have. Molly says, or cautious possibly. And you know what, Molly, we're a blend of all 4 of these to a greater or lesser degree. That's getting into a little bit more depth, but that's probably why you say possibly cautious, because that's probably part of your blend. And can I show the graphic of all 4? Let's see, let's go back. I can do that. We scan this back, see if that helps you. There we go. And you should have it in your handout as well, at the top of the handout. All right, I've got a couple inspiring. Bernadette says she's inspirational. Robin says inspiring. I work with 4th to 6th graders. I bow down to you because you need that type of inspiration when you're working with those age groups. Absolutely. Marianne is saying supportive. Laura is saying supportive. So when you can see this in yourself, you can definitely start to see it in others. And sometimes we look at other people and wonder why they don't think and act like us. That's because they're not wired like us. And the fact that they're not wired like us means that their needs may be different than our needs. If you can identify your parents' personality style and you can adapt to meet those needs, we can start to make the connection and building that relationship, because this is where I'm going with this, is that it's all about building the trust. It's all about building the trust. So in your handout and also in the chat box, I want you to think about, out of the different personality styles and the parents that you worked with this year, what parenting style, what parent's personality style was the easiest to connect with you? So in other words, when you had an interaction with that parent, it felt good. It's like, I connected with you, we're working well together. What is that particular style for you? And I want you to put that in your handout, as we're working through this, as well as, why do you think that was? Why do you think that was? What was your easiest connect and why? And then on the other hand, so you could write easy, type in there easy, tell me why. And then what one was your biggest challenge, and tell me why that was too. All right. And Molly is saying supportive. It's more opposite and complementary to that style. Molly, that's great. It's so great that you can see that, because a lot of times it is that opposite style that we're drawn to. As a dominant personality, the supportive style is my opposite. My husband happens to be supportive. My youngest daughter happens to be supportive. And in that, I find as though in our balance, I like to lead and they like to, I don't want to say follow, but they'll take my direction because they just want someone to tell them what to do and they're okay to do it. So that's awesome that you were able to see it. Yes, easy, supportive, challenges the dominant. Yes. Yeah. Now I just want to disclosure, because D is my predominant style. Not only are we dominant, we can be difficult when we're out of control. And let me tell you, for a lot of parents, they were out of control when they got thrown into this, just like you were. I mean, it's like everyone was trying to figure out what that was. Laura was saying easy was supportive, challenge was dominant. Yeah. Dominant is opposite easy. Wow. Okay. Dominant, difficult, and demanding. Yes. Yeah, we are. Yes, we are. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this gives you an idea of when I'm connecting with the parent, who is my easiest connect and which one was my challenge? What was the challenge? And so sometimes you find that you're butting heads with the parent. My personal lowest style is the cautious style. They ask a ton of questions. You need a ton of details. And there are times where I'm just like, it's just making me crazy. But when I understand that they need to have those questions answered, they need to know that what we're doing is the best, that what we're guiding them to do is the best, that what we're guiding their students to do is the best, because they are the perfectionists. I'm less offended by that because I understand where they're coming from. Does that make sense to you? So I want you to use this as a tool of understanding, not a weapon of destruction. It's great to be aware, but once we become aware, and these are the 3 pillars of my parenting blueprint, becoming aware is the first part. Then being able to adapt our interactions. And the 3rd pillar is to apply the right strategies so that we can build that relationship and build that trust. So hopefully you guys are seeing that. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes to just give an overview of understanding yourself and understanding the parents you were interacting with. Some of them were easy connects, some of them were difficult connects, and why. So as we're moving forward, and you can even use the same information when you're having parent-teacher conferences as well, not just in remote learning. How can I better connect with that parent so we can best support the child? Because the way I see it in education is we have a 3-legged stool, the 3-legged stool. So we got the child, we have home with the parents, and we have you at the school. And if somebody's missing, it's wobbly. That child is not going to get the best support. They're not getting the best support at home. They're not getting the best support at school because we are not able to collaborate effectively. So we can build resilience and consistency in what we're doing with that child. So hopefully that was helpful, because the whole goal here is to build the trust with the parents. Mark and I have been working in education probably almost 20 years now. And as I work more with parents, what I'm finding is that there's a level of mistrust. And I try to encourage your parents, like, these teachers love your kids. They're like their kids. They would never do anything to hurt your child. But for some odd reason, some parents in the areas that I've worked in do have a level of mistrust of the student. I mean, of the teacher. Like, there's just not a trust. And if we can't build that trust, they really don't care what we have to say. You know why? Because they don't trust us. So when we're able to meet those needs and build that relationship and that parent feel valued and understood, then we have better collaboration to better support the student at home. So I just wanted to lay that as the foundation as to looking at how we can have better communication and interactions with the parents. Now, let's take a look at what worked and what didn't work. So this is some information I want to share with you from the roundtable of those that I had worked together. Now, I have left these lines blank on your handout so that you can fill in the blanks of the things that you want to take away from this. And I want to hear from you, because many of you were parents dealing with the same situations at home. You may not have been in your district, you may have been in another district, or you may be in the district you were teaching in, but what works? So what I heard from my parents was weekly email communication was vital. They loved getting the Monday motivation, they called it. In other words, I know what the expectation is for the week. So they knew how to plan out and map out the week for their kids. They loved getting the Friday summary, because there are times where we had laid out what was going to happen on Monday through the week. Maybe we didn't get it done, or we did get it done, or maybe we added something else. And so that Friday summary was vital. So the parents knew what the expectation was for the week, what we were to have accomplished. So they wanted that opening and closing. The other thing that I found was interesting is that they just wanted Google passwords so they could monitor their students' assignments. And so I guess maybe they had a password, the kids had a password. It may not have been the same password, but some parents were saying, I really wanted to be able to get in and monitor what my kids were doing. So I don't know if that makes sense to you of how your setup was. And so is there anything that you would add to this yourself that you felt worked? So Lorraine is saying, we used to have coffee chat with the principal on Monday mornings. I love it, Lorraine. I would have coffee and a snack for 1 hour after the students went to class, and we would chat and solve problems. I love that. Now, were you still able to do that, Lorraine, virtually? Were you able to still maintain that? And is that something that you did one-to-one? Because I think that's an awesome idea. And I know my kids' school, when they were in K8, they had that going on with the chat, with the coffee time with the principal. Were you able to maintain something like that through remote learning, or was that something that we just did when we were doing face-to-face? Virtually, we Google Meets, and you don't provide the coffee. No, yeah, that would be a tough one now, wouldn't it? Yeah, but we do have conversations, and that's what they needed. So these are the things that they felt worked. These are the things that they felt worked. So this is what provided, and this is what worked for me. Now, let me share with you some of the things that they said did not work. These are the things they said did not work. Expecting that us, the parents, were computer literate. So many of my parents said that they were using terms to explain things that I was supposed to be doing on the computer, and I had not a clue what that was. I had no idea what they were talking about. Another challenge for some families was that they didn't have strong enough internet where they were to be able to have a Zoom meeting without having glitches. They didn't have printers. They didn't have various supplies. These were some of the things that they said were challenging. The changing schedules. If one person said it, everybody at the round table said the same thing. Changing schedules and not being aware of what the change was. Either it was too late to make a change for them. I mean, if either they needed to be home, they had another child, when the schedule changed, it really tossed them off. Number one, either it wasn't communicated effectively, or they didn't have enough time to adapt to the schedule change. Yeah, Wendy said the changing schedules were awful. All right, so you can relate to that. And it was hard because here you're thinking you got your kids set up for the day, you got your work to do if you're remote working from home as well. And next thing you know, things are changing and the kids are like, mom, this, that, dad, what's going on? And then for you, then you've got to take time away from what you're doing to try and come in and monitor what was going on. That tended to be a nightmare. I don't have an answer to that. I'm just saying that was like, that did not work. Lack of communication of the expectations, not everybody had the Monday and Friday. Okay. Not everybody had that. And relying on the kids to check their own emails. I know we want to raise our kids to be responsible, but some of them just weren't on it. And then parents were riding these kids all the time about what they needed to do. So in other words, we're relying on the kids to check emails where maybe it needed to be communicated in the class time. It was just checking the emails was just something the kids, it's not something they do on a regular basis. Oh, they'll scroll forever, right? They'll scroll forever, but were they checking their emails? Not so much. What didn't work was the portal that tracked the assignments, but then there was no way for me to communicate after I got information out of the portal. That was something that they felt was lacking. And the other thing that I heard from a number of parents was that there was no support for my kids in high school that had some advanced subjects, and even in our middle school as well, for some parents, advanced subjects in math and science, that they can't help these kids. These kids needed help, and their parents can't tell you, I've been out of school a while, and to go back and have to do that work, it would probably take me a while to try and get up to speed if I could even do it at all. Okay, so these are things that parents said did not work. Anybody have any other things that they would be willing to share themselves that did not work? Because I know that there are parents here, and I think we just need to hear from everybody, even in your own situations. What are some of the things that just flat out didn't work? Because we need to know what didn't work. So then we're putting together the plan of what works, where we go from here, that we don't make those same mistakes and assuming. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add to that of what did not work? What didn't work in your environment when your kids were learning from home? Or some of the things that maybe your school was providing that didn't work. Teaching live did not work. Wow, Robin. So tell me why that was difficult. Tell me why that was difficult teaching live, and from what perspective. It was better to video. All right, like that. Okay, so good. If teaching live wasn't effective, then preparing that as a video in advance, that's awesome. All right, what else? Anybody have anything else they'd like to add to that? And then have Q&A time. Love it. I love that when we're able to come up and with the solutions. Anybody else have things that they experienced even in their own personal environment that they knew did not work? Okay, Marianne says, as a parent of a special education student, the online expectations were extremely challenging. Marianne, my heart goes out to you. I bet it was. I bet that really was, because they just didn't have the support. actually you were probably all they had. At the same time, you were trying to do what you needed to do. That had to be very difficult. Lisa saying, get students to participate virtually. Yes. Lisa, did you have any tricks? Did you have any tricks that you did to try and get them to participate virtually? I'm sure everybody wants to know what the secret sauce is, right? Nothing was consistent. I felt we spent more time looking for expectations than doing the actual work. Wow. More time looking for expectations than doing the actual work. That's hard. So what really was the point of all of this, right? That's interesting. Anybody else have anything to share of what they experienced that didn't work? Lisa says, no, unfortunately, I teach chemistry and getting them to respond. Oh yeah, it was very hard. I can imagine. Lorraine says, in some cases, my students are also the parents and having their children home was challenging. They couldn't help their children along with having to get their work done as well. Yeah. And that's what I was hearing from a lot of the parents, that I needed to sit with my kids and how was I supposed to get my work done? And the parents were just so torn between being available, wanting to help their kids, and then feeling as though they weren't able to be productive at their jobs, working from home. And I'd like to think that most employers were understanding of that, but that is difficult. That is really, really difficult. Student involvement was very difficult. Yes, it really was. And if anybody has, like I said, any secret sauce to how they were able to engage the kids on Zoom meetings, I mean, just please share it, because I think everybody's looking for that golden coin. What was it? And it's difficult. And I'll share with you. You probably already know this statistic, but Mark and I share this when we work with teams, is student engagement or focus is about 1 minute per year of age. 1 minute per year of age. So if you're working with younger kids, 6, 8, 10 years old, you are at best 5, 6 to 8 minutes of Zoom time before they're wandering under the desk, getting a drink, turning off their camera. That's the reality of the attention span, especially when they're not in a classroom, when they're engaged with other people. All they are is sitting here, just like we are, looking at the computer. And I'm hoping I'm keeping you engaged, because we max out at adults, we max out at 15 minutes. 15, even as adults, we max out at 15 minutes. So it's just, but that's truly where we're at. So when I'm talking to parents who have a 7-year-old that had a 20-minute Zoom class, 20 minutes, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you're lucky you had 5 minutes at best of attention span. And then all the parents are doing is just riding them to stay engaged and pay attention and get in your seat. And have you been there? Have you been there with your kids? Yeah. These were some of the things that were really challenging. And so one of the suggestions, and we talk about this, Mark and I, when we're doing our differentiated instruction, is to teach in acts. Teach a little bit and have a downtime for an engagement to do some work. Teach a little bit in engagement. I don't know if you were able to do breakout rooms, on your Zoom calls where they got to work with another student to accomplish something. And then we all come back together. Like, we just needed to break it up a little bit. So it wasn't straight out teaching, because they were not retaining after the first 10 minutes. They just weren't. And so some of you probably have experienced that with your kids at all. So these are things that we found did not work. So let me share with you what the parents felt that they needed. And again, I want you to reply in the comments as well, because you're on both sides of the fence here. If you had kids at home, and as well as being required to teach, these kids in the remote model, what did they really want? So let me share with you some things. And again, feel free to add information to this as well. Oops, I'm sorry about that. They preferred having a user-friendly system in place. And one of the recommendations was video on how to use the technology. So in other words, if we are using Google Classroom, that you would have created a video, as someone was saying, teaching, creating a video instead of live. But if you were to create a video for the parent, sharing your screen as to what to click here and click here and click there, so that parent had a video that they could go back and reference to. Because even if you taught them once, if they had a weekend, then Monday morning, they were like, how did I do that again? It gets to be a little bit more challenging. So having videos that were already done on how to use the technology, screen share and record. The other thing was having that effective and consistent communication, effective and consistent communication. And the schedules, oh my gosh, we talked about the schedules. Everybody talked about the schedules, was just not working. The schedules were not working. A clear overview of the expectations, not just to the kids, but the parents. Now, do you notice I didn't just say an overview of the expectations? They asked for a clear overview of the expectations. So we think that we were clear, but some parents were feeling as though it was not clear enough. In other words, we're assuming that they knew what we were talking about when clearly they didn't. Some parents will ask and inquire for more information. Other parents don't want to ask because they don't want you to think as though they don't know the basic things. So therefore they say nothing, and then they get off the call, or they click out of the email, and they still don't know what they're doing. Clear expectation. Another thing that they would have preferred having, and maybe some of you have done that, with just having office hours and Zoom calls. Maybe it was in an evening where, Wednesday night or Friday night, where you would be on Zoom and anybody could come into your room and talk about what was going on with the kids and ask any questions. Maybe the kids could ask questions, but really the parents just wanted a connection to be able to talk to you when they didn't understand what the expectations were for their kids. And parents really needed, and we had, it was one-on-one tech support area. Wow, Wilson, that's awesome. That is awesome. Did anybody else have that? A tech support area, a one-on-one tech support area? Because I think that I did hear that from a lot of parents, especially parents that maybe aren't in business, that aren't using technology on a regular basis. Our kids are more knowledgeable on this stuff than they were. And then the kids came home and parents were trying to figure it out. And it was just really, really frustrating for them. They just felt, it really was like a hit to the self-esteem. I cannot support my child because I don't know what I'm doing. Parental controls on school-issued laptops or Chromebooks. Did anybody have that? Did anybody have the parental controls on their school-issued Chromebooks? Because I think a lot of parents were saying that they were finding that their kids were wandering into other areas on their Chromebooks, looking at other sites, finding things that they shouldn't be looking at because there were not parental controls on the Chromebooks. Did anybody have that in their particular building, that they had parental controls on that? Or were your computers mostly just open? I'll give a minute. I know it takes a little bit for some of these comments to come through. We had some good controls with GoGuardian. Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure we could work that out, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely. I left the blanks empty so you guys could pull from it what you felt you needed, because you may be doing some of these things that we already talked about, and we might be adding to it. But absolutely, we can definitely do that for you. Save that as a PDF for you. And but that was some of the things that parents felt frustrated that they may have their kids' devices with parental controls, but then there were laptops or Chromebooks that came home and they were not able to control that, no parental controls. But as a teacher, I used, is it box? Okay. All right. So there are ways, but these are some of the things that the parents said that they really needed just for that support. And they were looking for, you see that last one, the same thing that you were looking for. How do I keep these kids engaged? How do I keep them engaged? They were looking for the same things. How do I keep these kids engaged when they're just wandering and I'm trying to get my work done? It was just really, really hard. And like I said, the teaching in acts and smaller nuggets, trying to engage the students in a short activity after teaching a little bit, short activity, bring them back, teach, bring them back. Sometimes because they're smaller nuggets and it's not a long time and then we're done. The long time, this is what my husband says, if I'm able to do this online with you. He says, when the bum gets numb, the head gets dumb. So when the kids sit too long, they're zoning out. I think we all do that. But when we're working with a child who doesn't have that mental capacity to stay focused and in the game, and they're doing it day after day after day, is it no wonder that some of these kids were just flat out, I don't want to do this anymore? It was very, very challenging year. Some of our kids were very successful. Some of them were very successful. But other kids were just really challenging, I think, for the lack of interaction they were struggling with. And I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Isaiah? Remote learning does not mean we have to be remote. Sometimes there's no substitute for a phone call. I love it. Just talk to the parent. Yes. Yes. So were you reaching out? Were you doing individual phone calls and reaching out? Because I think that's awesome. And I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Just reach out to the parent. I think that is great. Yes. Yes. I see ya. I see it. Thank you. Thank you for, I appreciate that. I feel bad when I mispronounce somebody's name. So thank you so much for sharing that. So again, they were just looking for that same thing. How do I keep my kids engaged so that they are going to be successful in this model? And I can continue to do what I'm doing, because not all parents had that ability, just like you did, to be able to watch what their kids were doing and still do their job at the same time. So these were some of the insights that I was able to get. This was the real talk from the home front of what worked, what didn't work, and what they really needed. So as we are moving forward, and we'll take a look at, what the next steps are. Tell me, what was your biggest takeaway from what we shared today, from some of the things? And I appreciate those who were sharing what they experienced as a parent with a child at home. But what was your biggest takeaway? What was your biggest takeaway? Robin says, didn't you notice that whenever you spoke with parents, they were in need of adult conversation too? Wow. Yes, too many people felt isolated. Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, I'll just share personally. You've been online with me. It's been less than an hour, and I am very outgoing. My style blend is dominant and inspiring. So I am supercharged outgoing, right? And so when I had to come home and all my meetings were on Zoom, and then I moved from a professional development model to a one-to-one parent coaching model, I was so happy to have someone to talk to besides my husband. Not saying it was a bad thing. I mean, him and I were still happily married. Everything went well. I know some people wanted to trade out partners in the middle of this pandemic, but I'm keeping the one I got. But it was just to have someone to talk to. I totally agree. Feeling isolated, and the kids did too. The kids did too. People were trying their best, Laura. They really, really were. And that's why in putting this together, and I talked to Arlen about this, is that I want to be able to inspire and encourage you, because I know, like, it was baptism by fire. Like, it was like, boom, we're home, figure it out. And then, you had the end of last year, and then you had to come into another year. We weren't even sure, we're going to have to do a whole nother year. Like, it was like month to month, what was going on. Some kids came home, some of them went back, then they went back home, and then, it was back and forth and back and forth. So it was really hard on everybody. So I just want to say, you're all awesome, because this has not been an easy year. It has not been an easy year. So I just want to give you a lot of credit and how much I appreciate and respect you. Lorraine is saying, my takeaway, not feeling alone. Parents were so willing to share about their frustrations, and we're open to the suggestions to simply take 3 slow, deep breaths. Yeah, we all needed those 3 slow, deep breaths, right? That is great. That's great. Robin said, biggest takeaway, so many educators opened up to this year. Oh, let's see, opened up to this year. I'm sorry about that. Teaching styles, sites, and slides. Biggest takeaway, so many educators opened up this year, teaching styles, sites, and slides. That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it really did change the paradigm, didn't it? Hopefully teachers realize their focus versus homework all the time. Realize their focus versus homework all the time. Yeah. Biggest takeaway, teachers were forced to learn technology. They were, Marcy, right? And I'm telling you, that is my absolute lowest trait, is that cautious detail tech side of it. I'll talk to people all day long, but to have to connect all the dots to everything else, that's the stuff that burns me out, Love your psychological perspectives on how to understand parents and to look at ourselves. Good, Christina. I'm glad that that was helpful for you. The understanding of personalities was a total game changer for me. It's changed so many things in my life, to better understand people and why they do what they do. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do and sharing this with educators, well, school leaders, and to build effective teams, and for you to better be able to understand your students, and for parents to understand their kids. I mean, if you don't ever have to talk to another human being the rest of your life, you don't need what I just shared with you. But that's not the case. And I think we all struggle when we can't make connections with people and are frustrated with why. And so I just shared with you just a little scratch of the surface of understanding the personality traits, but there's so much more to that, and it really can transform so many relationships. So thank you. I'm sure that I'm glad that you found value in that. I feel the most positive outcome was that parents became much more involved in their students' education. Marianne, that's awesome. That is awesome. I agree. They had to, right? They really had to. They really had to. So that is awesome. Thank you for sharing your takeaways. So this is what I want you to think about, and pop this in the chat box for me. Based on everything that we just shared in the last, let's say, 50 minutes or so, what is your next step? What are you going to take away from what we learned that you will share with your teams on things that you might want to do differently? Can you share that with me? And as you're doing that, I'll read. Carol says, coaching grandparents who were the childcare providers was essential. Yes. Yes. Because that's the other generation, right? That's the next older generation. So if the generation of parents were struggling with technology, you can bet you the grandparents were struggling as well. Absolutely. Oh, you like that? Let me tell you, my husband is full of so many dad jokes. Try living with that. You know what I mean? So I'm glad you like that. But it's true. We can't leave our kids just sitting all day long. And look, we all get to it. You've been through professional development. We've all been like, after a while, we just need to get up and move and talk and engage, and just not listen all the time. So I'm glad you like that one. Oh gosh. So Mary Ann says ways to communicate with parents more effectively. And Mary Ann, it's not just in remote learning. It's how can we build these relationships throughout the year when our students come back? How can we build the relationships for parent-teacher conferences when we're trying to put together collaborative, effective strategies to help improve the academic success of the kids? This is awesome. Wilson is saying prep for next year now, have systems in place with all types of relationships and fine tune it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. If you need any help with that type of stuff, I mean, obviously we've been around and working with IPA for a while. We've been kind of flatlined and not being able to get out and do professional development in the buildings, but now that things are moving, if there's anything we can do at teaching our youth to support you and to support your teams, let us know. We'll come in and partner and walk alongside you. Laura says relationship first. Bingo, bingo. All right. Don't care what you know until I know that you care. That's truly what it's all about. Oh gosh. Marcy is saying my district is looking at having virtual office meetings. Parents, guardians can talk to teachers about concerns. I love that. I think that's great. And that's a paradigm shift that we can keep, whether we're virtual learning or not, rather than feel as everybody needs to come into the school, we can do these virtual meetings and nobody has to travel. We can all log on. It can be 15, 20 minutes and everybody goes back to what they were doing. So I love that, Marcy. That's something that we can share and other people can do. So thank you for sharing that. Sherry says, sharing the personality titles and traits with my coworkers so that we can all be aware of our differences when working with professionals and families and build upon our differences when building these relationships. You are so welcome, Sherry. You are so welcome. It is so true that when we understand the lens that someone else sees life, we are less offended by their behaviors because we now can see life through their lens. Does that make sense? So when I am dealing, because I'm that very outgoing and dominant personality, when my opposite style, the supportive style, and they're slower paced and they're indecisive and they can't make a decision and they're unsure about everything, and that would drive me crazy. I just, I set a plan, I put the plan together and I start with go, right? And then I got people that are hemming and hawing and I'm just like, what is going on here? But when I understand that they need appreciation, they need affirmation, they need step-by-step, I can meet their need. And if I meet their need, my needs get met. Does that make sense? So it's a win-win, but it's not a win-win if we keep pushing against each other. Okay. And this happens in teams everywhere. Realizing that everyone is at a different level of technology knowledge. Yes, that was so true, Lorraine. Helping the parents and guardians work with taking the kids away from laptops to do family things that are part of the curriculum. Cook, science, storytelling. Oh my God, storytelling. You're a woman after my own heart. That is definitely great because parents were struggling after a period of time to what to do with their kids. So they just let them stay on the screens. And even in my group, in Parent by Design, I was bringing in experts that were sharing, number one, the reason why that's not a good idea, but not if it's not a good, not that it's just not a good idea. We need to replace it with something else. And so many people were feeling limited. Why? Because we couldn't get out and do things, but as you were saying, like, I like to cook and I like to do those things. So that's always my go-to anyway. Cooking is like my therapy. So I'm always cooking, but there's so much we can learn about different food combinations and measurements. And as you were saying, like science and doing family recipes of things that were done a long time ago. And so or cultural foods, learning about cultural foods. I love that. That is a great suggestion. Yes. All right. That's how we cover curriculum while building relationships. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So much fun. All right. My mantra for myself, parents, and teachers: give yourself and others grace during the pandemic. Marcy, so true. So true. This has been great. Well, folks, we are just about done our hour. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for investing your time with me today. If there's anything else we can do, my contact information is on your handout. You can email me at Karen@teachingouryouth.com. I have a phone number there. If there's anything we can do to continue to elaborate and support you, you just let us know. Arlen, again, thanks for having us.
Karen, thank you so much. This has been a really wonderful hour. I appreciate everything you've shared, and I appreciate all the chat. I'll save the chat transcript and email that out when I send out the recording, because there's some really great ideas in there, and I want to make sure we keep that recorded.
Really were.
I will also be sending for our Illinois participants an evaluation, which once completed, will send you the ISB evidence of completion form, so you can get 1 hour of professional development credit for attending this. And I'll be putting an email together, sending it out to all participants from today and all registrants who weren't able to attend. They'll get a chance to watch the live recording. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.